Hello, beautifuls. So great to be here with you. I'm excited. Look, we have people already joining us. Trudy, Brian, Bobby, Teresa. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to welcome everybody to make sure you jump in the chat and ask the questions you want to ask, because there's stuff, for goodness sakes. We got stuff to talk about. So today is all about, what is the past for? I mean, what is the purpose? Was it just a pain in the butt? Was it just the wrong parents? Was it just something you did when you were in a bad place that you wish you hadn't? You know, we have all done those things. And I know that one of the things in common wisdom, but even in the land of, in the land of karma, when we talk about karma, one of the things we talk about in that land is this idea that it was a gift, or it happened for a good reason. We try to explain it away somehow. Or we try to re-perceive it in a positive light. And the past really isn't here to be re-perceived in a positive light. It happened. We're here to live our lives. And from a metaphysical point of view, there is a purpose for the past, and there is a purpose for your life. But the purpose for your life isn't probably what you think. Most people think there's some deep, dark, amazing purpose. And in actuality, you have free will, so you can make choices in any direction. But there is a particular direction that you're headed in. And so the past, to some degree, serves that. Hi, Millie. So glad you're here. So I was talking earlier with a group of people, and I want to make sure I hit on a couple of subjects. One of them is about PTSD. And how PTSD, tell me, just put in the chat if you feel like you've experienced something that's really created PTSD for your body, and how has that changed you? Just put it into the chat. You don't need to say what it is, but how has that changed you? What habit have you developed to protect yourself? So just write it into the chat. It's going to help the discussion, I promise. So what patterns have you developed to protect yourself from that happening again? Okay, so we're going to talk about how to relate to the past differently than how we relate to the past as therapists might say, or than how we relate to the past as some personal development person might say, or how we relate to the past as some guru might say. We're going to relate to the past today as the laws of physics might say. Okay, well, I see over preparedness. Emma, interesting, jumpy. So a little bit like knee-jerk reaction-y, right? I want to talk about how your brain works. And then we're going to talk about the laws of physics. And the aim of this discussion is to get us all to have a collective sigh of relief as the past loosens its grip on your future. We're going to create some spaciousness and some freedom together today as we relate to the past differently than we normally would. Millie, vigilant for things. I'm going to speak to that directly, actually. Trudy says a loss of confidence, barriers to vulnerability. I hear you. So just think of how that's colored every relationship, how that's colored relationship with children, relationship with sweeties, relationship with, I don't know, your house, your home, money. Interesting, isn't it? What would life look like if that autopilot or those autopilots were just gone? Or were so insignificant that you could barely even conjure them up? Don't you think that would be interesting? So what we're going to do is some work today in that direction. Things that cause shame, PTSD, regret, pain. Most of us start to assume that the work is to look at the past, to analyze it, to see if we can just, get deeper understanding, and the deeper understanding somehow is going to have us feel free. We assume that because since the time of Freud and since the time of Jung and since the time of all those brilliant, doctors, we've assumed that that's the way to transmute it. Now, there are people that do somatic work, and there are people that do movement work to help desomatize all of these stored traumas, because we assume that getting rid of them is what we need to do. But I'm going to say something world-changing right now. In the next 10 minutes, you're going to hear a way to relate to the past, that no matter how traumatizing it is, my goal is to permanently assist you to change the way you relate to everything that's happened to you, that's causing you those autopilot ways of being, such that your access to freedom will permanently alter. Okay, so I'm going to take us all on a journey together, if you're up for it, to be able to free ourselves from even the idea that the only way to transmute is to do somatic work, or that you even need to focus on excavating it. That somehow there's an entirely different relationship to the pain of the past that can have it more fully integrate into your experience and not affect your future outcomes or your knee-jerk reactions or the glass ceilings that you've put on yourself because it's too scary to go there. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a study that was done. A bunch of psychotherapists and medical researchers looked at the brain of mice. And yes, I'm not a huge fan of doing painful experiments on mice. However, the result of this particular one, the experiment was done, so we're going to use the results. It's pretty interesting. They had a whole bunch of mice exposed to the smell of almond. And mice have highly sensitive olfactory nose smell senses. They use it a lot, more than they use their sight. And so they had the smell of almond, and there are receptor sites for that smell inside of a mouse's nose and inside of our nose. And they would associate the smell of almond with a small shock. And so the mouse would be like shocked in its foot every time the smell of almond would happen. And you can imagine, just like Pavlov's dog, even when you took the shock away, the fear of this almond thing would cause them to jump even when they just smelled almonds from then on. But the interesting thing didn't happen there. The interesting thing happened when they started to measure the receptor sites on the inside of the noses of the mice. And what they noticed is the body started to adapt to something dangerous. It actually physically evolved into that mouse having more receptor sites for that almond smell. And they could measure it because they knew the danger was coming so they needed more of those receptors, and danger was coming if there was more almond. Now that's interesting for all of us. That says that physical changes happen in your body when you decide something's dangerous and now you need to respond to it. The next thing that happened, though, is even more interesting. Is that when the mouse gave, when a sperm and an egg came together, the mouse had a tendency to give birth to baby mice that actually had the same evolution in their smell. So I call this an embodied state. Now you might think, when I talk about embodiment, it's all good. But this isn't necessarily a great thing, is it? That we inherit from our parents ways of being that are embedded into our physical body, that are in response to scariness, such that now we're more vigilant for the things that scare us. We're more sensitive to the things that scare us. So not only does it happen in us, it also happens in our children and our children's children, for that matter. So how do we disrupt this pattern of the body actually adapting itself to the perceived scariness? Because what that means is perpetually, if we were just focused on what scares us ad infinitum, what would happen is we would just be a big ball of protective mechanisms that prevent us from ever living our lives. And our physicality, our actual physical body, would adapt to what we perceive this world is made of. And we would have physical attributes in our senses that would oversensitize us to the not so good in the world. And the laws of physics say that if you're oversensitized to that which is not so good in the world, and that's what you're vigilant for, then unfortunately, life is going to send you more of those things, and you're going to live a life where you're permanently almost paralyzed by that which you have perceived is important to you. So one might say, how do we change this? How do we change those things that have caused pain? How do we change our relationship to the things that have caused pain, that have caused regret, that have caused shame? So that's point number one I want you to make, to show you how poignant and how ancestral these evolutions culturally and genetically, because they get passed on. So the next thing is that when you have something that caused you shame PTSD or stress PTSD or fear PTSD or whatever it is, it creates a glass ceiling. Why? A glass ceiling on how far you can go. A glass ceiling on how expansive your life can be. Why? Because what most people do with traumatic events or stressful events or extremely hard events is they actually create, they get really excited. If you recognize yourself in this, well, I'm going to explain a scenario, right? So my last book took me so long to write, because it was connected to doing talks and speeches, and I wrote this paper, and I had to read it out loud in English class when I was in grade, I'm thinking 9. And I literally, and also it's connected to a time where my dear teacher in grade 3, who loved me so much, I was very, very tall. I still am very tall. And there was a high jump. And in front of everybody, he said, now Jennifer's going to do high jump. And he assumed that I was so much taller than everybody, but I had monocular vision, so he didn't know that. And I didn't really know what that meant either, but it means I had no depth perception. So I run up to the bar to do high jump in front of all my fellow grade 3ers with that big blue or green mat, depending on where you were in the world. And I ran up, and it had rained the night before, and I misjudged how far away it was because I have bad depth perception. And I ran up into the bar. I leaped over the side of the mat, like on my back, landed on my back in a puddle in mud, and knocked the wind out of myself and started crying. So the last time I put myself in front of people, it was pretty traumatic. For some reason, it didn't hit me until the book. The book was like the glass ceiling that felt exactly the same way. Putting the book into the world felt the same way as me getting mud and my fellow students laughing. And I was just so ashamed and embarrassed of myself, and I felt terrible. And so the glass ceiling was hit when I was writing the book, and I didn't want to write the book. I did everything to sabotage myself from writing unstuck, because it came up against, oh my God, I'm going to have to speak, say, do something in front of everybody. It's going to be permanently in writing. Holy crap. And you can see that I worked past it, but I needed a lot of help to write that book. So glass ceilings sabotage us from getting to where we're going to go. So has that ever happened to you? I'm going to say that it's happened many times a year over the course of your life, where it's like, wow, that felt really bad. Therefore, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to put myself out there that vulnerably ever, ever, ever again. But we're here to dance with everything. And I can tell you part of the reason that happened is so I can share that story with you and let you know from my permanent state, here I am on a Facebook Live with all of you talking about the past and how it affects us, and you noticing that I'm speaking in front of a whole bunch of people and I'm literally not letting anything, that stuff just doesn't get me. Why? Because I relate. So what I'm going to say is, so listen closely. What happens is that unseen glass ceiling will happen as you get excited, as you start working, as you start accomplishing, as you start putting yourself out there and all that kind of stuff. You'll get to a point where it's like it's the same feeling you had before, and that feeling that you had before is a feeling of I can only have this much richness, have this much fun, be this expansive, be this expressed, be this alive, shine this much, whatever it is. And then what happens is the pain of it being taken away is so bad that I'm only going to go to this level. So it's to prevent the pain of the joy being taken away. Isn't that interesting? So most people say, well, then we got to work on the problem. We got to work on the past. And what I realized in taking course after course 25 years ago to try to fix myself is that I just realized that there had to be a better way than that. So the next part of our story in this journey that we're going on together about shame and guilt and regret and all of these things is understanding the laws of physics, who we are and why we're on the planet. This is where the punchline happens. So stick around, baby cakes. And by the way, I would love for you to share. Please share in the chat if you can relate to that, if you know what I'm talking about. If that's the kind of, if you've had things that have created glass ceilings that when you get to a certain point of intimacy or connection with someone, I think Millie, you were alluding to that, that somehow you have to sabotage it because the pain of losing it, that's a reflection of the past, is so bad that you have to sabotage it back to a comfortable place. You understand? And we do it completely unconsciously. So here's the design of human being. This is so beautiful. This was such a major aha. This is such a freeing shift in my thinking when I realized it. So this expansive soul that's had many, many lifetimes meets the confluence of the direction that consciousness is going. So in other words, where humanity's consciousness, your soul considers where humanity's consciousness is going and considers what's happening in the environment. It considers your cultural, the culture you're going to be born into and the trajectory that's on. It considers the ancestries that you've had in past lives and the skills you've developed. It considers the cosmic direction of all that is, because in no time space you can see all of that in 0 point. And as your soul is considering all of that in the 0 point, it knows that with its skills and with its natural propensities and with its ability to create, the time to come forth is when you were born to that particular family. The confluence is that everything is happening for you, for you. You are meant to live a life, and you will have free will, and you will have circumstances, and there are future potentials that you're living into, some of which would be the most expansive. Thanks for sharing, Nika. Right? Some of these things would be the most glorious opportunity to create upon creation. And you have the opportunity to make choices to live this expansive, incredible, most delicious life. And the laws of physics have given you, and all that is, has given you this body that has cells, that when you're on track with what would be the most expansive path of creativity, you will feel really energized and good. And when you're resisting, your cells will let you know that you're off track. Now, what I'm about to say mimics what Abraham Hicks might say, and I've seen it in the laws of physics to be true as well. So I'll say it a little bit differently than them, but it's the same truth. And that is this: that your greater self is already living into the future possibilities that you've created because of the contrast that you live, because of the difficulties, because of the really challenging upbringing, because of that one event that changed your whole life, because of that horrible uncle, because of whatever it is. And what's happened is you have gone forth and you have said, what I desire. You said this in your mind. Your body might get to the glass ceiling and freak out, but your mind has said, I want this future. I would love a future where I get to build a safer, more productive world. I would love to be able to fully express my voice into the world through singing, because it was shut down, blah, blah, blah. I'm just thinking of one client that I love who, and that actually happened. She didn't go and join theater and do all that stuff because of a very narcissistic parent, right? So what happens is we live this upbringing and we make our choices, but the desires have already launched a future trajectory of a life where all of that stuff and better is not only possible, but it can be aligned to. So imagine that in every day when you start a new day, you have the opportunity to align to a mood or a feeling that is more consistent with the future trajectory than it is when it comes to protecting about the past or that shameful event or whatever the case may be. That the only reason for the past happening the way it did, every little event, whether it was inspiring, whether it was, frightening and awful, the only reason for it, if you believe that it's a benevolent universe, is not cruelty, it's not the roll of the dice, it's not, well, that's just my life. Because in all the lifetimes that you've lived, you've launched desires into the future trajectory, and you have the privilege and honor in this lifetime to do the work, if you wish, to get out of the way of the future potentials that have been created as a result of the clarity from the polarity that you've experienced. And in every moment, you have the choice You have the free will choice to align with the futures you've created or protect from the past, which will only bring you up against your past over and over and over again. And your mission, if you choose, you could live that way. It is perfectly fine to live that way. Truly, there's no judgment from consciousness. It's just that consciousness is going to have you feel contracted. You're going to physically feel resistance and contraction because the absence, this is where it mimics Abraham Hicks, the absence of your greater self, of your higher levels, of the love of the universe of you, the absence of the love of the universe. Because the love of the universe is the feeling of yesness, the feeling of expansiveness, the feeling of a future that's waiting for you, the feeling of the alignment with the future potentials that you're the one that created it. Consciousness just, co-conspired with you to create those future potentials using all of infinite wisdom. And so it exists. So you have free will. The only thing that's stopping it is your interest in protecting from the past rather than the interest in becoming an Olympic athlete and learning the skills of someone that understands that the only reason why contrast happens is for very expansive futures filled with the response to the problems that you've had, the solutions, the expansiveness, the possibility. And the only thing in the way is a choice every morning and a choice the next minute and the next minute. And the next thing in the way is learning the skills to be able to live in that much flow. Especially, in the embodiment workshop, there is an exercise we're going to do that I said yesterday I've only done we're not going to do it right now. It would take forever. Well, it's not going to take forever. It'd take an hour. But this exercise is around being able to safely experience and have the actual experience of your future trajectory in the now without going into instant PTSD or without going into fear or without contracting, to be able to have it in a way that your body can catch up with that biology such that your cells will give off the yes to that future trajectory. And in doing that exercise and getting your left brain and right brain aligned at the same time to that future trajectory, the significance of the events in the past, we don't get rid of them because that's very hard and it takes a long time if you haven't noticed. What we do is we cause them to be so insignificant by bringing you to a place that the view you have of life, of the past events, transmutes for all time and space, for your ancestry, for every life before that you've had, and for all future lives. This thing that's been governing your behavior, such that you could effortlessly actually go to the next and the next and the next. In fact, you could even use this technique over and over and over again for every glass ceiling that you ever perceive. Imagine that it wasn't about stopping bad habits. Imagine that it's about making the events that cause, nobody has a bad habit. They just have habits that actually contract them, that where they're trying to be protective or keep safe and stop the past from happening again. Therefore, your past is constantly in your future because every time you hit the glass ceiling, it's just like the past. But what if you could actually have the past be the past, but it actually caused you to relish your future more, to set yourself free, to actually be more in love with your life, and that the design of life is actually to have things in your past like that, because you knew you would come forth and create upon creation in ways that would be catalyzed by that. And your only job is to learn the Olympic level skills of lining up with the future that awaits. Imagine the future that must await, given the things that have happened. The last thing I want to say is, you don't have to wait for everybody around you to change in order to align with that future. That's just a way of gaslighting yourself. Most of the people that you're waiting to change, you're waiting to change because they remind you of someone from the past or a behavior from the past. So you're really the one that has the trigger that is the reason why you're waiting for those people to change, so you can feel safe. What if nothing outside of you was an excuse anymore? What would life be like, I wonder? So, do you really have glass ceilings? No. You have well-practiced neurosynaptic habits in your brain that have convinced you that somehow you're going to die if you move past them. And it is entirely possible, first, before you move past them, there are exercises you can do to make them less significant. And they don't involve focusing on those crappy events. They actually involve, and this is the final thing I'll say, gaining confidence in your superpowers, gaining confidence in your relationship to life and yourself, gaining know-how in an operating system that people who live like that live by. It's not to say that bad things don't happen. So the last thing that sabotages us, and I highly recommend you take a look at this for yourself, is this idea that doing this kind of work, working with anyone, is getting you to a place where you're consistently happy, where the purpose of life is happiness. No, the purpose of life is to live it. That's why when you confine it by glass ceilings, it doesn't feel good. When you don't feel good, it's because the direction you're going, your higher levels, your greater wisdom isn't coming with you. That's how your higher levels and greater wisdom tell you that you're off track. Your feelings, those intuitive, that contractive bodily feeling of this doesn't feel good, that's because your consciousness didn't join you in the direction of I'm wrong, I'm bad, I should be ashamed, this is terrible, what a frightening situation. It doesn't agree. That's how loved you are. When you go in the direction of your fears, your consciousness won't join you, and what causes the feeling of fear is the absence of your conscious joining you. Not that that thing is scary. It's that your consciousness is trying to tell you that the perception you have on that situation isn't true. By not joining you, therefore you feel bad. Does that make sense to you? We misperceive what feelings are. So even the perception you had at the time of the original incident, this is the punchline. The feeling you had at the time of the original incident, or incidents, as we have all had. I had this thought as I was crying. I don't belong. I don't fit in. I'm tall, I should be able to do this, there's something wrong with me, I'm going to try to hide the rest of my life. All of those things felt horrible because my greater consciousness was saying, you're magnificent, you're incredible. Are you kidding me? This is going to serve you later in life. You're going to be able to really help people. My greater wisdom was doing me a great favor by giving me bad feeling. by not giving me a bad feeling, but being absent from the self-judgment. Because my greater self would never judge myself. There's no judgment from greater consciousness. There's only you're all that and a bag of chips. Right? So the absence of your higher self, when you're making judgments about your life, what happened, and all of that, the absence of your higher self happens because the higher self will never join you in self-judgment. It will never join you in judgment about who you are, who you've been, what's happened to you, what it means about you. And the bad feelings are not there so you can protect yourself against the bad feelings. The bad feelings are there so you can know that your higher levels are telling you that that's not the truth about you, your life, or the direction you're headed. That's why you feel bad. Isn't that freeing? So you guys. Hi, Dorothy Martin Neville. Gosh darn it, I miss you, girl. I've talked about you a billion times in the last several months. So, everyone. Here it is. Upcoming, as you know, I'm doing this 5 days such that you can get a sense of what's possible out of the Embodiment Workshop. The Embodiment Workshop isn't about, although everything is about experiential exercises so that we can embody this evolution in the way we be. The people that have been there, I'm sure you can do a little chat right now to say what that program has meant to you. We have people coming over and over and over again now. Because embodiment is a process in our terminology. It's about embodying that operating system. And part of that operating system is relating to feelings differently so that you don't get into PTSD when you reach a glass ceiling and that glass ceiling says something dangerous is going to happen now. I'm going to feel really bad if I speak my truth because when I did that when I was 5, so I'm just going to stay quiet, or I'm going to sabotage this situation. What if you actually could effortlessly move through that and your past didn't keep repeating? What if you could create something new? And Karen, absolutely, we already have the registration open for February. I would book it off so you can come because we're going to just keep getting more full all the time. So, and I would love to see you there so I can give you a big hug. So guys, this is the Embodiment Workshop. It's about having the experiential exercises to get yourself not to the place of that mouse experiment that I told you about, i.e. that's something really, the little mouse is not a conscious, does not have our frontal cortex. So, so we get to be conscious about making a choice in our amazing brains to not actually be governed and evolve to be more and more afraid all the time. We literally get to use the laws of physics to evolve ourselves to be able to dance with anything and everything and have joy no matter what. And this upcoming embodiment workshop is all about going direct with your innate wisdom, the innate wisdom that you shut off when you went through those events. It's all about having the confidence and clarity as a consistent way of being. And then it's all about what's your future potential in the now, literally what wants to live you, and then making plans, step-by-step plans to actually live that life. And we're going to give you a system to be able to do that ongoingly in this specific embodiment workshop. So that's every embodiment workshop is different from the next. And we're bringing in new exercises this time, keeping some of the other ones, but bringing in some new ones this time. And we'll do that every single time. So I'm very excited to see you guys there. You can go to thewideawakening.com/embodiment. If you are not part of our Agents of Awakening community. If you are part of our Agents of Awakening community, hopefully you've gotten a few emails with the link. And but register soon, because once we get to a certain amount, we're going to cut off joining. I think we're getting to 75, and over the next couple of weeks. I suspect we're going to get there. So make sure if you're thinking about it, just come. Don't. The very pattern that has most people questioning, like, should I, shouldn't I? What about the money? What about the time? Listen, that's another glass ceiling, isn't it? Literally, the act of not going is just you honoring the very glass ceiling you're trying to transcend. So please, don't do that. If you're really ready to just get on with getting on with it, just come. Okay? I really look forward to seeing you here in beautiful Asheville. It is. And our Agents of Awakening community, we actually continue this conversation for for 5 minutes or so, getting a Q&A. I will close off in a minute from the TWA Playground on Facebook, which I love you guys. If you guys want to make sure that you're in the continued conversation and able to ask questions, which you can always do in the chat on Facebook, but we do them live here in Agents of Awakening. You can join Agents of Awakening free for 30 days and just check it out, and do Get Out of Your Own Way for free, which is a $500 program. So, or you can even do Thriving Operating System. So agentsofawakening.com to get 30 days free. But in order to do the embodiment workshop, the wideawakening.com/embodiment, working directly with me, it's still a small workshop. 75 people is small. So, at some point, almost everyone's going to be talking to me, and I'm going to go into your hologram. So just come. Okay. So, and by the way, if you're 30 days free in Agents of Awakening, the embodiment workshop is half the price of if you're not in the Agents of Awakening community. So I would join for 30 days free if you're interested. And then you can just join the embodiment workshop from there for half the price. All right, you guys. I love you. People on Facebook, if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear what comes up from the discussion today. I would just love to hear how you're relating to the purpose of the past, and actually even more so the purpose of feelings, and what feelings actually are. Feelings are really, really affirmations from greater consciousness, your greater consciousness, or when you're off track, it's the absence of your greater consciousness joining you. Pretty powerful, right? So anyways, everybody on Facebook, I love you. I will put the, if you have any questions, or if you want to know more about Agents of Awakening or the Embodiment Workshop coming up September 7th, 8th, and 9th, just send me more information in the chat, and I will send you the link. Okay. I'll just give you the link. You can also connect with me in Messenger on Facebook. Okay. Love you.